I think it is symbolism. I think what's really important, though, is what we do the next day, and are we able to work together? And we're entering into this new Congress with that spirit, and I'm very confident that we're going to be able to make some progress on behalf of our country.
Valerie Jarrett previewing the big State of the Union night, but everyone wants to talk about the seating arrangements.
Well, we do know that the president does have a bipartisan partner. It's this guy named John Boehner. All right, Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Amy Walter.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest in politics. It's twitter.com/Rick Klein, twitter.com/Amy E. Walter. It's almost a holiday here in Washington. Amy, what has caught your eye this morning?
I know, it's like the Oscars for Hollywood. It's really hard to go get your hair appointment and nails done. But for right now, here's what I'm watching. It is also date night here. That's our first Top Line. Lots of talk, Rick, of course, about who is sitting with whom. It seems as if every member in the Senate, at least, has a bipartisan date to sit next to tonight. The real question, though, is just how awkward will our traditional stand-up, sit-down, clap, clap, clap look if one person in a couple stands up and the other stays seated?
And speaking of awkward, we got word that the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor, has asked the House Minority Leader, Nancy Pelosi, to be his seatmate. Now that is a great coupling. Next up today, meet Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is the young congressman from Wisconsin who's the chairman of the Budget Committee. He has been tapped in that often difficult task of responding to the State of the Union address, and it is going to be a time for intense scrutiny on Mr. Ryan. Republicans are eager to put him forward as the new face of responsible and budget cutting and commitment to fiscal responsibility, but he's got some controversial things that he has done with his roadmap, in particular cutting of Medicare, cutting of Social Security in the long term. Democrats are actually eager to have him as a foil, but I think we'll see the birth of a new Republican star in this.
I think you're right. And the other issue, of course, is the president coming out today. Our own Jake Tapper gets the exclusive on this, saying that he is going to call for a ban on all earmarks and to have a freeze on federal spending, really taking the opportunity to undercut Ryan's message before he has a chance to even give it. All right, next up, drama. In Chicago yesterday, we saw the Rahm Emanuel kicked off the ballot for mayor. And though he says he is more confident than ever now that his case will be heard and that he will prevail in the Illinois Supreme Court, no indication yet about whether the Supreme Court will take it up or if they will be able to make a ruling in time. Because, as you know, Rick, the State Board of Election has to start printing those ballots and sending them out. Early vote begins at the end of the month. This is probably going to go down right now as the most surprising story of this early 2011 cycle.
No question. This race was almost over. You had this huge campaign account that Rahm Emanuel had. His people were confident that they had survived the difficult residency challenges to get this court ruling at the last second. At the very least, makes this race wide open once again. At the most, it could mean that he's not even eligible to run for mayor of Chicago. Right. And finally today, a Teapot production. What you'll do to sell a book these days. Take a look at the new video that Tim Pawlenty and his pack have put together in conjunction with his book tour. Take a look.
Valley Forge wasn't easy. Going to the moon wasn't easy. Settling the West wasn't easy. We are the American people. We have seen difficulties before, and we always overcome them.
That is laying the patriotism on thick. You have to wonder if Tim Pawlenty has another ambition in mind, Amy.
I don't know. It looked like a Brooke preview to me. I don't know what you could possibly be talking about, Rick.
Well, maybe it'll end up being a Tom Clancy movie, if nothing else. We begin today's program with two members of Congress who have never been in the State of the Union before. They are freshman Congressman Adam Kinzinger and Tim Scott. Karl caught up with them on Capitol Hill last night.
Tim Scott from the state of South Carolina, Adam Kinzinger from Illinois. Sorry about the Bears, but thank you for joining us on Top Line. Really appreciate it. And it was a rough game.
It was rough, but we're gonna, you know what? We're gonna pull through. Illinois always does, so we'll be all right next year.
All right, now you guys have come to town as part of this class of 87 strong freshmen ready to remake this town. Spending's going to be obviously the big issue here. Are you satisfied with what we're seeing early on? I mean, already we hear the leadership in the House talk about, well, maybe it'll be more like $50 or $60 billion in cuts this year, not $100 billion.
I'm pretty satisfied with the RSC, the Republican Study Committee, that's come out with a number of $2.5 trillion over 10 years. The question, of course, is the devil's in the details, so we'll have to get into the details. But there's no question that if we're talking $50 to $100 billion, it's less than 10% of the actual debt that we have. So if we're going to have a major impact on going forward, it's going to start with a number that has $1 trillion on the end of it.
Right. And you're talking about the Republican Study Committee, which is not the leadership,
Exactly.
and leadership has not embraced that yet. And the first immediate question is going to be funding for this year, and already the indications are it won't even be $100 billion.
Yeah, we're going to have to make a step in the right direction, and from my perspective, the step in the right direction is to actually have we have to lower spending beyond 50 or even $100 billion. I'm looking for opportunities for us to actually see spending cuts more than $100 billion. On the Rules Committee, I offered an amendment to the resolution which requires us not to go back to 2008, but to go beyond 2008 wherever possible.
Are you looking for cuts over at the Pentagon as well?
Yeah, I think we don't need to cut. We don't need to exempt defense spending. I mean, here's the reality: we're going to have to keep people in place. We're going to have to keep products in place. We're going to have to obviously have the material to be able to do what we need to do. But we can do that by getting into the defense budget, as Secretary Gates has proposed, and I think he's doing pretty aggressively, and finding areas of waste, areas where there's duplication, areas where we can have increased efficiency. Finding that and taking some of that area we cut and putting that to whatever future increases we need towards operation or to a larger military, whatever it comes down to.
I'd go a step further and talk about the fact that in the military budget, you have a number of items in there that are Congress's sacred cows.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so the question really is, does it help us meet our military objectives, or does it satisfy our constituents in a way that is inconsistent with the military objective?
Right, well,
so what I would say that we have to do is make sure that when we start looking at the military budget, we start looking at those sacred cows that we as congressmen and congresswomen have placed in that budget.
Well, let me bring up a big one. It's one of the biggest in terms of earmarks. It's the extra engine for the F-35. Your leadership has supported that. I mean, John Boehner, Eric Cantor have both been on record supporting the extra engine for the F-35. It's something that Gates says that they don't want, they don't need, and it's real money.
I think that's something that, as I'm getting briefed on, I'm going through the process now of learning what are the pros and cons to an extra engine. At this point, I haven't made a decision because I want to be fully briefed on it. I know that as a pilot in the military, the planes I've flown have all had one engine,
Right.
And as you come out with successive models that they have improvements on, maybe new engines are retooled. So I'm taking a look at both that. But again, the key is, as Tim said, there can be no sacred cows. We have to do the best thing to defend our country, which is the #1 job of the federal government, and then we have to do everything we can to make sure that the federal government is going to be around and that our country is going to be strong for the generations we leave behind.
And I'd say, think about Adam. Adam is a pilot, a military pilot who flies in those planes.
This is not abstract here, right?
But my point is this, that we have a freshman class filled with pilots, doctors, nurses, with folks who actually had to do it in the real world. So when Adam's talking about budget cuts and second engines, I'm deferring to Adam. I'm going to listen to my classmates. I understand that he's in the pilot. He's in the plane.
You listen to him over Speaker Boehner or over Majority Leader Cantor on this
Here's
issue?
what I would say. If they are pilots and jet pilots and military pilots, I will listen to them as well. But my first conversation will start with my classmates on issues of cutting the budget, on issues of military, on issues of concern. I have two brothers who are in the military.
Yeah.
One's in the Air Force, one's in the Army. When I have a pilot standing next to me, my brothers would tell me that the first place you start is with the guy who actually flies the plane.
We're coming up on 2012.
Yes.
I want to hear from both of your thoughts. How do you see this field? Who do you like?
Well, Adam Kinzinger for president is probably my first
There you
choice.
go. We got it. I'm not old here.
You're 32, right?
Right.
Well, by that time, you'll be 34 and a half. And so, I like a person who is philosophically in line with the right-hand side of the party. I need someone who understands that spending cuts is the fastest way to grow our economy. I need someone who philosophically agrees with the fact that our moral foundation is important to us. So if I can find someone who fiscally understands the need for us to continue to cut spending to revitalize our economy means to put more people to work in the private sector and not in the government roles, I'd start seeing some people that I like.
Has Mitt Romney given you a call yet?
I've spoken to most of the guys.
Yeah, I would imagine. South Carolina is going to be key.
Yeah,
In the primary process.
First in the South, we've done a very good job of selecting the person who will represent the Republican Party. I think we'll continue to do so. We have a tough battle on our hands. We have a liberal president who's becoming a centrist.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to see what he says tomorrow night and how we respond to it and not react to it as a Republican conference.
Okay, so who are you sitting next to?
I have no idea. I'm just going to get out there when I get out there, and I hear I've got to get out way early in order to.
Yeah, to get a seat. Now, are you going to go to the right or to the left? Have you?
I'll see where there's an open seat and make that decision at game time.
I'm heading to the right.
You're going to the right.
Absolutely.
That doesn't shock me.
Well, why is that? You know, Southern boy from North Charleston, South Carolina. We said to the right. We even lean to the right. So at the end of the day, I'm going to the right.
Do you think this is like wind addressing this whole seating stuff? Or is it? Some people even say it's a little bit of a ploy to kind of.
I don't know. I think in response to the Gifford shooting, I think we are more aware of the necessity of civility.
Yeah.
Is this actually moving in that direction? I would hope so. I'd venture to say, let's see what happens 72 hours from now and see what kind of debate and conversations we're having.
You know, I think it's a neat gesture. I'm very supportive of the gesture. You know, there was somebody that was basically compared Republicans to Nazis on the floor of the House, you know, a few days ago.
Yeah, I heard that.
I mean, there's going to be this stuff back and forth. There's going to be people on both sides that say things that don't reflect the party as a whole, and I think that's what that case was. But look, we've got to be able to shake hands at the end of the day. You always hear, you know, about Ronald Reagan and Tip being good friends and being able to go out afterwards.
And drink on the balcony.
That kind of stuff needs to return. But we have to continue to fight passionately for the issues we believe in. Because if we quit fighting for the issues we believe in, then we may as well not even be here doing the work of the people.
All right, Tim Scott, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot
for joining us on Top Line. Really appreciate it.